Having to take a client to court is never fun and it's never a position you want to be in. That's why I'm going to be sharing 7 event planning contract mistakes that some planners make and what you should actually have included instead. Now, I am not a lawyer and the advice in this video, it does not constitute legal advice, but I want to share from my personal experience 7 clauses that should be included in your contract and some of the implications that it can lead to when you actually don't have them included. So the first thing you want to include is a payment agreement. I cannot stress this enough, but it should be very clear between you and the client exactly how much the cost of the event is, exactly when payment is expected. I mean, dates, right? Dates down to the actual date. And if there is a payment schedule, the timing of those payment schedule, exactly what amount and on what date they should be received. So when you work with clients, make sure that these information are clear, because this is where some people can run into problems where they say, okay, I'm going to charge you $2,000 for the event, but there's no clear date on when that clients need to have it by. And then after the event, they still haven't been paid. Days after the event, weeks after the event, they're chasing the client because it was never stipulated, right? Sometimes people will make the assumption that if I'm planning your event, you're going to pay me before the event. That should never be an assumption. It should be outlined very clearly in your contract. Number 2 is the scope of service, meaning what are your service boundaries? You're going to be planning this person's event, but what does that include? Here, sometimes the lines can get blurred. You might agree to do a full event planning, wedding planning package for somebody, but they expect you to also be running errands, to be going to get the bride something on the day of, to be running back and forth, to be handling emergencies. That's not included in your scope. This is why it's important to include the scope so that everyone knows where the boundaries are, so that when the boundaries are being exceeded, you can say to the client, that's not in the service that I provided, that's not in what I quoted you. Or you can say that's not included, but I can add it on for an additional charge. So at least you have a line or a meter that you can show them so they know as well. Now, if you don't have this included, run, don't walk to get it added, because this helps to clear up lots of confusing conversation with clients as you're working on their events. Number 3 are your cancellation terms. So if you decide to cancel an event, let's say you are not feeling well and you can no longer plan this wedding, or you have surgery scheduled or something, what are the terms? Like, what are the terms that the clients need to know? How much time do you need to give them? Will you be finding a replacement planner? How much will they be refunded? Or if the client decides that they need to cancel the event, what are the stipulations? Will they get a deposit back? Will they still have to pay a certain amount? Do they have to compensate you for your time up to a certain date? You need to have all of this outlined and stipulated, because here's the thing. We're in a world where things are moving, things are happening, and anything can change at any given time. So you definitely want to ensure that you plan for things that could potentially happen and that everyone is clear and know how to proceed if they ever need to activate those clauses. Number 4 is your termination policy. Now, this should not be confused with your cancellation policy, only because it's slightly different. So to terminate the agreement, it could just be that you need to terminate it because it's something outside of your control. Let's say, for example, you had a client booked and we had the pandemic and we had to shut down and you can no longer actually plan this event, right? What are your termination policies? What will you let the client know by when? What are the dates? What are the things going forward? What will they get? How will they be notified? All of this should be included so that your client should never have to wonder, okay, now we are in the pandemic, we're now on a lockdown. What happens next? This should be clear and this should be clearly communicated. Number 5 is an indemnification clause. An indemnification clause essentially just limits your liability to things that you might not be able to control. So let's say someone at somebody's wedding decide to trash the venue, or they decide to do something that is going to cost a lot of money to be repaired, but they're guests at the wedding. You need an indemnification clause to cover your business and to protect your business from liability in this case. So at least you can say when this person or if the venue decide to take you to court, this was not our issue, we're not liable, you need to speak to the client. But you need to have an indemnification clause in hand so that it protects you from situations like these. Number 6 is force majeure. And this is essentially to cover and protect you from things that are, of nature that you cannot control, like for a flood or hurricane. There are things that can happen that you have zero control over, because guess what? Modern nature. So let's say there's a flood and it washes out the venue. You need to be able to protect your business from having to compensate the client for that because it's outside of your control, right? It's something, it's just natural. There's nothing you could have done. You need to have this clause included. Now, I know you might be thinking, do I really need it? Like, what are the chances of a flood happening? Well, you never know. What are the chances of a tornado hitting Toronto? But I've lived here long enough and seen it happen. So ensure that this is included in your contract. Number 7 is a photo release. Now, you might have, be working with clients and photographers, videographers who just release all the content to you with no issue. But you still need to include this clause because sometimes you do find clients who don't, right? I've actually had clients who are working with a particular client and they're saying, I'm sorry, you won't be able to use my event photos to market your business. The photo release essentially gives you permission to use all the event photos or content to market your business. And I think this should be standard in all the contracts, but I'm looking at it from a marketing lens. Depending on the client, if your client is pretty high end and maybe they want to really control how their image is released, it might be different, but then you're looking at more of a high end event where they're paying you a premium price. If it's just a regular event, more than likely a lot of clients will not have an issue with you using their images as long as they've been approved, they've gone through the photographer's editing process to market your business. And this should be standard. This is one of the ways that you can grow your business is by using your past events to promote your business. So if it's not being included, I don't know what you're waiting for. Here's the thing though, never make the assumption that clients are okay with you using their event photos, because I've had clients who made an assumption about that, and I've had clients reach out to them to say, I'm sorry, please remove that photo from your Instagram. I don't want my image out there, right? So be sure that it's included. So if they've signed off on it and they reach out to you and say that, you can say, well, I'm sorry, but according to the contract that you signed, I can use this for marketing purposes. Now, if you really want to be nice and you don't need the image because you have so many client events, you might just not use it just to, maintain that relationship. But otherwise, it's in your contract, love. Now, those are the 7 that I highly recommend. Of course, there's a ton more, but here's what I'm going to do for you, even one better. I do have a contract template in my template shop that you can download. It's been reviewed by lawyers, so you know it is legit. It's been reviewed by a lawyer and signed off. All you need to do is download it, fill in the information about your business, get it signed by your clients, and you're good to go. So I'm going to link it for you in the description. Be sure to grab a copy. Now, if you have any questions, drop them down below and I'll answer them for you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button.